In 2008, there was what was known as the economic crisis, or credit crunch as it was called in Britain at the time. And this was essentially a period of economic downturn. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people got in serious financial trouble. A lot of people with families became desperate. A lot of people lost their houses. A lot of mortgages went down the drain. It was a disaster for everyone, pretty much. And still in 2020, 12 years later, a lot of people still haven't recovered. People even who were millionaires prior to 2008 today, perhaps not as much in a good state as they otherwise were. We've heard stories of people falling on their own sword, falls from grace, and including the average person. But one of the most noticeable statistics was debt. A lot of people are in debt now. At least in the UK. And by debt, I don't classify a mortgage as a debt. Even though it technically is, I view that sort of as... we separate debt from mortgage, right? Because that's just a given, right? And mortgages tend to be a lot more generous than a typical debt. What we mean by debt is payday loans, general interest debts, just general debt, and it's a massive problem. I don't know if most people are in debt, but a ton of people are, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about debt in general. We're going to talk about the many rip-offs and borderline scams out there, and we're going to talk about other people's histories with debt. Now, me and you have never been in debt.
No.
Thank God. Because most people, I think, are more likely to get in debt when they're young out of ignorance, and if they're old out of desperation. So if you've got a family and you need the money. Luckily, we've avoided one of those bullets where we're young yet not in debt. And it's like there's two sides to debt when it comes to me, because the conservative side of me says if you get in debt, that's your own problem. And it's your own fault you were that dumb to get in debt in the first place. And then another side of me says, God, some of these companies are right scumbags. Some of these people are giving away debt, like loans to people who they have no interest doing so. It's like a battle of two ideas. It's like, on one hand, if you get in debt, yeah, it is kind of your own fault. You did sign the dotted line. On the other hand, it shouldn't be so easily available for people to get in debt.
They take advantage of desperate people or dumb people.
Yeah, or both.
And stuff like that.
Yeah, or both. So we don't really have any personal tales to say with debt. Look, I could make up something and go, oh, I remember when we were 40 grand in debt. Do you remember that? And we were living on the bread line and we paid it off, but we haven't. We haven't got any experience in debt because you've seen... Well, that too, but you've seen your family struggle with debt. I've seen people struggle with debt. And one of the rules I made for myself very early on was never get in debt. I don't classify a mortgage as a debt, so I wouldn't mind having a mortgage, right? But I would never get in a debt whereby there's something I can't afford, I want it now, therefore I'm going to get in debt. Because it doesn't make sense to me. Because the only reason why we have more sort of leniency with mortgages is because who the fuck can pay for a house up front? No one can pay for a house, outright. Unless you... Most people can. Well, okay, not no one, but most people can't just go, oh yeah, there's $200,000 for a house, there's, they can't do that. It's one of those things that you need to pay it off slowly. But a TV, would you really get in debt for a TV or a sofa? A lot of people get in debt with sofas. Seriously. They pay off sofa. Some things are just like, okay, you can't afford something now, right? So you're going to end up paying more in the future for something you can't afford. That's a loss from you. Is your time really worth that much money? Because that's essentially what you're going to ask yourself if you're getting in debt. You look at the people who take payday loans and get in a lot of debt. Typically, they're single mothers. And you always wonder, why is that? And it's because typically the father is the one who gains the wealth and the woman, the mother, looks after the offspring. If there is no father, they're usually reliant on the state. The state, at least in countries like Britain, is so unbelievable. You get nothing. You get nothing. You get like £50 a week. How on earth are you meant to live on £50 a week in the UK? God forbid you live in the South or London or something like that. And so they get desperate, and they basically they just go. They don't really think. They're just like, I'm scared they're not gonna be able to eat. You know, they lose that sense of logic. Oh, I'm gonna have to pay this back in the future. Oh, it's gonna be a nightmare. They just see money and they take it. And so it's like, this is what I'm trying to say here, is that the failure of the family unit, the collapse of the family unit, I think has contributed a lot to debt. And the fact that, think about this, if everyone had a stable family, a stable mother, stable father, with solid income coming in, the family's all in order, payday loan companies and debt companies would never make a penny. Right? It's all down to instability, really, typically. I mean, sure, you've got some people who are like alcoholics and drug addicts or whatever, right? But typically it is single mothers. You always see that in ads. Do you remember that ad that we saw for that company? And it was like, it was all single mums. And they were all like, oh, I got a loan to pay my cooker. And I didn't have to pay it back for 5 months. They leave out the part where they're basically being forced at gunpoint to do this ad. You know what I mean? It's like really, it's a bigger thing.
Mm-hmm. But I just think my mom and dad, they never really spoke so much about money. And I mean, he gave her some money every week for buying food and stuff like that, but if that ran out, then, you know, she couldn't go to him because he said, well, obviously he didn't have more. So then she when, you know, she needed clothes for her kids or something like that, maybe just for herself, then she had to, you know, take matters into her own hands. And that's the only way, that's the only way she thought she could go.
That's just poor communication though, isn't it? I mean, I like to. No, I know, but I like to think that me and you, for example, we wouldn't. No, I know, but we wouldn't be so mentally separate that you would know what page I would be on financially, and I know what page you're on financially. We would never be like, I wouldn't be out buying, I don't know, like $5,000 computers, and meanwhile you're like starving, and I'm like, well, I got no money left. Tough. Look at this Mac I just got though. Cool, right? I like to think that we would never be that mentally separate. That could just be a sort of sign of relationship failure rather than the status quo.
Yeah, but I mean,
but some people are just bad with money, and that's the story that I was going to get to. I have a family member of mine, right? And my God, despite being one of the more wealthy members of the family, like they've always got money, they've got loads. They're really bad at managing money. They just see something and they just impulse buy it. Buy. Like they're like an advertiser's dream. They see it and they just go, fuck it, I'll buy it. And at the end of the week, they realise that they've spent 20% more than they earn. And they're fucked. And then they get in debt. And they got in so much debt that if they ever want to buy something expensive on finance, like a car, something that you can't pay up front, they need guarantors now to do that. It's like, it's really bad. Like I think the credit rating must be fucking like nuclear. It's that bad. Like some people are just inept with money, and that's what I mean. It's like it's a balancing act. I imagine myself like on a tightrope, and I'm like, do I fall? It's weird. We don't have to really pick sides. It's not like one is right and one is wrong. I was going to say, are people just bad with money and the debt companies are just the ones who get the blame, or are the debt companies the ones who sort of incite it? But it's a mix of the two. Like some people are just bad with money and they'll get in debt, and that's that. Like they're just bad with cash. Doesn't mean they're a moron or a bad person. It just means they're awful with cash. Partially, I think that's because we don't teach in education about how to manage money. You never get taught that.
That's absolutely crazy. That's something that everyone should be taught.
Yeah, I mean,
it's crazy that they don't.
You have to do a business class to even learn remotely about money.
Yeah, but and also imagine if your parents are bad with money, and then
just generational, isn't it?
I mean, your school doesn't teach you that, and then your parents are bad with money. Then what are you supposed to do?
Well, that's what a lot of people. In the UK, we have what's called chavs, right? And chavs are basically like like rednecks in America, people who live on like council estates, like welfare housing, benefit housing, and they're like, they reproduce like rabbits, and they always wear hoodie. Like you can, this is a chav guy. Chav guy wears a hoodie, smells like nicotine 24/7, and if you look at him the wrong way, he'll go, "You what? You want to fight? What are you looking at?" Whereas a chav woman will typically be pregnant, like that's pregnant and smoking on a doorstep. This is true. Like we were once on the way to like a restaurant, and we had to go through this really rough, like worse than ours, which is unimaginable, rough like council estate, and there was legitimately a pregnant woman, must have been like 20, smoking on her porch, pregnant. And I remember I was like, that is like the most stereotypical chav thing ever. But people always roll their eyes and go, "Oh God, chavs, they're all the same, like that." But people don't go like, well, hang on a minute. Let's say you're in a family and to them the norm every day is drinking, smoking, and being on welfare. Where are they going to learn about managing money unless they take the initiative themselves, which is very rare. That's very rare for a human to sort of turn their back on their tribe and go, the way I've been taught to do things all my life and the way I'm used to is wrong. I'm going to step out my comfort zone and do it differently. That's very rare. It takes a lot of balls to do that. And I think that if that's the cultural status quo, that's really bad. And it isn't just single mums. It is people like chavs who tend to get in a lot of debt. I think we really need to start teaching people about money, how to handle money, save money, because it isn't common sense. It's common sense if you know it, but if you haven't, it's not. Like what to watch out for if you do get a loan. What is interest? You go out in the street here, right, and you ask people what is interest. They'd be like, "Is that like a Twitter hashtag or something?" "Oh no, it's a curry." That's what they would say. They would have no idea what you're on about. They don't know.
But I also don't think that if you're terrible with money and you don't have much experience, like you wouldn't know what is a good interest rate and what is unacceptable.
No, but you would just trust that the people in the suit, because these interest companies, they always wear suits.
Trust the companies.
Exactly. They would be like, "Oh yes, the sweet talk here. It's like a corporate speak, right? You trust them because they're in a suit. They're in this big glass corporate building. They must have your best interests in mind." That's how naive people think. But in reality, they don't realise they're just trying to get as much money from you as possible. And no one teaches this. And no one... I don't know why we don't have a topic in schools that's just called like living or life or something like that. Sounds like a hippie.
Finances.
Well, I don't think it's worth that. I think it's just like where you learn basic things about life. Even if it's things like how to cook an egg, or I know it sounds dumb, or how to get learning about cash, learning about mortgages. Why is this not taught?
It's the same with taxes. Nobody teach you how to do taxes, how to do your taxes, or how to pay your bills.
Yeah, exactly. No,
That's crazy.
Or what is a good price? What is a bad price? How can you negotiate things? If people were taught this,
to go for what to think about when you pick a bank to have your money.
Exactly. No, but just basic things about life. People aren't taught this, and if you don't come from a family who's got the shit together, or if you don't have a proper family at all, you're going into the world very naive, and you're going to be taken advantage of a lot, because not a lot of people have that resilience and intuition to sort it out themselves.
Yeah, I think that if you're more likely to just go the same route that your family went, instead of just looking at what did your family do wrong, why are they in that situation.
Well, people don't like to look at their family in a negative way. A lot of people, if you say like that, even if their mother did something awful, like their mum was a murderer or something, and you mentioned it, the instinct is to get angry that they mentioned that and say,
defend them.
Yeah, and defend them. Yeah, justify it, because it's our own flesh and blood. And people think if you criticise your own mother, father, or a family in any way, then you must hate them, and it's not the case. I think if you truly adore someone, you're willing to critique them, not in a rude way, but in a way where it's like, "Hey, I want the best for you, so this is it's like tough love." It's like we have a fat dog, Archie, and he's overweight.
No, he's not fat.
He is fat. He's obese, morbidly obese.
Absolutely not. He's not morbidly obese. He's chunky.
What? Look, you can call him whatever you want. Look, he's fat, and I always say you can't keep giving him food because he's.
We don't.
How many Whatsits did you give him earlier?
I gave him 2.
And
Just 2. I didn't give him anything
I
else.
saw you give him 3 at least.
Maybe I gave him 3, but that's it.
Right, so what I'm saying is, he's too fat.
They were tiny.
You've got to go, hey, actually, no more food. And he might start rolling around and looking sad, but it's like, I don't want your arteries clogging. You can't just keep going, yeah, there you go, every time he looks at you, right? It's like tough love.
No, but also, I mean, it's been probably 2 weeks and I haven't given him anything. Yes, I gave him a few of them today.
What has this got to do with debt? Look,
brought it up.
No, but it's an example, right? Tough love, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, we're getting off topic here. Should we see what the people have said anyway? So we asked people, I think I asked them 2 questions. I think first of all, I asked them about, how has debt affected your life? And let's go through that one. What was the actual question again?
Have you ever been in debt? If so, how did it affect your life?
Yeah. So let's see what people had to say.
Tech Now said, I can't vote, as when I register at an address to vote in my country, it become public information. And that's how debt collectors find me. Though, even if they did, I'm technically homeless, and due to my lifestyle, I don't own much, and the stuff I do own isn't much worth, so it would be useless for them to take my shit to sell. It's also rare for me to buy things on credit. Last time a company did, I robbed them though. LOL, their fucking mistake. Sounds like a nice guy.
I know why you picked that one first, because you know I'm going to rip him and you are. So, no, but that is a prime example of someone who's just fucking dumb and inept and stupid. And I don't, but like, look, it's one thing to say like, oh yeah, I've had a bad experience with debt. I once got a loan and it went really bad. It's another thing to go, yeah, I got in debt. Fuck them, lol. It's like, this is, you just give people in debt a bad name. It's like, fucking hell, I don't even know where to begin with that. Tell you what, if I ever have a son or daughter, I hope it's not like you. No, I don't feel sorry for them at all. That's just blatant stupidity. Who's next?
No fun here, move along, said. Student debt, mortgage, stuff I always expected at some stage. Mostly it's a case of happy to take on, happy to finish with too.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to look at debt. It's like, if you really need something now, or there's something so big that you can't pay it instantly, and you know that you're going to be able to pay it off, there's nothing wrong with debt. I would never get in debt personally unless it was a mortgage, but that's fine. When people get in debt and they don't know their future financial outcome, or they don't particularly care, that's where I think it's ineptitude. But yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. If you're happy to take it on, but also happy to pay it off, that's a good way to look at it.
Critically Normal said, yup, £2,000, mostly credit cards. Was a financial advisor at the time, and in my current quest for getting myself out, my interest in the subject peaked so much that I switched to careers to insolvency practitioner and now advise other people on their debts. Now, other than my mortgage, I float between £0 to £6,000, but it's an affordable amount and helps my credit score.
So he got in debt originally and got out of debt to advise other people on debt.
Yes, and now he's in debt between 0 and 6,000, but it's affordable, he says.
Well, hey, if that's affordable for you, if that would not be affordable for me, that would be nightmare-inducing. But yeah, all right, that's pretty good, I guess. It reminds me of that guy on that show. Can't pay, we'll take it away. There's a show in the UK where if people get in debt, they get a knock on their door from bailiffs, and they go in there and they basically like repossess houses or take stuff away. It reminds me of one of the bailiffs on that show was once in debt himself and had bailiffs to his house, which is how he discovered the profession. Right? It's like I don't know. It's like the circle of life. It's come full circle.
Wartspa said, I was 5K in debt when I bought my first car off Craigslist. It didn't affect my life too much, except I had a car and small monthly payments of about $300 to $400. When I got a better job, I paid it off immediately. I held the loan for 10 months.
I wouldn't have got in debt with Craigslist, though. He bought a car off Craigslist and was in debt to someone on there. I wouldn't buy a car on Craigslist. Craigslist is like the most unreliable website ever, to my knowledge.
I don't know if that's what he meant. He said he was in 5K debt when he bought his first car off Craigslist, and then he had small monthly payments for the car and about $300 to $400. But I don't know. I mean, most of these people.
Well, look, yeah. Again, as long as you can pay off your debt, who cares? But it's when people take loans out and they don't know if they can. That's what's bothersome.
For a Better Life said, never. I hate that.
Completely agree. In fact, it could have been me who said that.
Super gross boy. No, super goose. Super goose.
Are you alright? Have you lost the ability to speak? You can't go 2 words without stuttering. Go on.
Super goose boy said, I was in debt with my mom.
We are all in debt to our mothers for all eternity. There's nothing we can do about that.
Yeah, that's it.
All right then. Well,
the other question.
Yeah. So I also asked about payday loans because I think that when people think about debt, payday loans are the first ones that come in mind. You know, have we said what payday loan even is?
Yeah, I think you did in the start, right?
Yeah. Well, basically, I can't remember, but basically, it's like a loan. People might not call it payday loan in elsewhere though. Over here, it's when you get a loan and the companies are blatantly ripping you off. It's like 1,000% APR. It's ridiculous. And they're always a rip-off. They're never good. And they're only the most desperate and vulnerable people end up going for them. But, yeah. And what is it I asked?
You asked, what is your experience with payday loans?
All right, let's see what the people said.
Cat2323 said, avoid them. The fees soon turn into original loan into a huge debt you can't pay.
Yeah, it's a spiral of debt. There was a story about, I don't know if I mentioned this, but there was a guy around here who ended up committing suicide because he was in so much debt and he had people like knocking at his door and he didn't know how to handle it. Really antisocial guy. And the debt just spiraled, right? I mean, it's one thing to get in debt because you're dumb. It's another thing to get in debt and then it just goes, like, you don't know what you're getting yourself into because you weren't taught about debt or money or handling money or anything, and it just gets out of hand. And this guy was there, and it's a shame.
Satan's wife 13 said, do not if you can help it. Same with title loans. The interest charged is insane. You'd be better off paying late fees on your bills, honestly.
You probably would. Yeah, completely agree.
Wolf Doc said, they tend to be yet another despicable way to extort money from those either desperate, destitute, or dim-witted.
Agree. Again, the other half of my brain is tingling and is saying, but if you're dumb enough to agree to a loan which has 1,000% interest, that's your problem. But again, another part of me says these companies just shouldn't exist. I don't know what to think.
Cat in a pointy hat said, I bet they were 900% satisfied annually.
I bet they are too, unless governments came down on them and then they would be 9,000% in the shit.
420 Rolex. Predatory in all aspects. If you get to this point, I'm sorry, but you need to rethink your life. I work in banking, and half the time the billion-dollar companies will nickel and dime everyone they can. But these payday loan places are another story, and I don't believe have anywhere near to same government oversight.
What I was thinking was, why is it that people, because we were talking about how it's usually single mothers who are on welfare who get in debt and chavs who are pretty much universally on welfare and get in debt. Why is it that you can take a loan if you're on welfare? Because surely the only income you have is welfare, and so you know what you're going to get because it's a fixed sum. So, it's not typically a fixed sum, but you get what I mean. Very rarely does it go up, right? If it goes anywhere, it goes down, at least in the UK. So why is it that a company can expect money from someone who does not have any income in the first place?
They are the most desperate ones.
Yeah, but surely surely that should be like the government should come in and say, you're not allowed to take a loan because you're on welfare, right? Because you're never going to be able, you factually will not be able to pay that off. And it's not your money. I mean, it kind of is your money to spend, but not really, right? Like, why can you take a loan if you're on welfare? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Can you though?
Yeah, of course you can. How would single mothers and chavs, etc., get? I
just thought maybe they had like a half-time job at somewhere. I don't know.
Like, I think that, to me, I'm trying to think, if I was the government here, what would I do? Like, someone just says, right, you're the government, what do you do about payday loan companies? It's like, okay, this is what you should do to take a loan. Excluding things of huge importance, like a house, because I don't classify that as a debt, as I've said, or a car, which I think is a necessity in for many people. You have you have sort of like a cap on how much money, first of all, you can lend, right? So it can only be like, say, I don't know, say like 20% of your average income in a year, right? So you can only lend that a year, unless it's some sort of business venture, but then you get that from an investor, a private investor, and then they know what they're getting themselves into if you lose it or not, right? That's an investment, not a loan. So if you want a loan, you need that's what you need. So basically, you need to have the money in the first place, unless you go to some venture capitalist. But that's an investment, which is different from a debt, as I said. So basically, you can only lend 20% of your annual income every year, and not only that, but you put a limit on the amount of interest that a company can put. So there is no 1,000% APR anymore or anything like that. Like you force them to be fair. And I'd also say people on welfare cannot take a loan. I think that would eliminate 95% of the payday loan industry. That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing as far as I'm concerned in many ways. And yet people who are legitimate, like who legitimately are fine with debt, they would be able to get debt and would sensibly pay it off. And big things like houses and cars and things that you will not be able to ever afford anyway, like on a first, like as a purchase, would be excluded anyway. I'd love to know what people think of that. Is that a good idea or is that a bad idea? Is there something I'm missing there? I feel like there's something I'm missing there because I don't know why that's not been implemented. I don't know, but hey, there you go.
Fangus Twatfield said, I've been in trouble with them for like 6 years. I shudder to think about the thousands of pounds I've paid in interest alone. I would absolutely highly recommend you do not use them.
Wonder how much you went for in the first place and how much he's paid off. I wish you included that there, because that would have been fascinating. I always like to hear how much did you get from them and how much have you ended up paying from them. They're never worth it. They're never worth it, like ever. It's just, God, please, no matter who you are. God, was that all of them?
Yes.
All right, well, there you go. It's a shame that there was no in-depth stories about people who have been in debt and their stories of recovery. It all seems to be really depressing. But hey, debt is depressing. All I can say to people is, it doesn't matter how desperate you are, shooting yourself. Okay, this is what debt is like. If I came up to you and said, I will give you £1 million now, and you can spend it all day on anything you want, but tomorrow I'm going to shoot you in the head, would you take that? Of course you fucking wouldn't, because that's stupid. But that's basically what debt is like. Like you're getting pleasure now for ridiculously more pain than you will get pleasure in the future. It's excluding houses and even cars, excluding those things. I don't see what you need to get in debt for. A lot of people would say food, clothes. It's like, listen, if you need to get in debt for food and clothes, you've got bigger problems. You need to sort your financial situation out once and for all. Because even if you get in debt for those things, when the bailiffs come knocking, what are you going to do? Pay them in oxygen? You're just going to have to pay. You're going to get in more trouble. It's like unless it's for. I mean, there's very few good reasons to get in debt. There really isn't.
it depends on where you live as well. I mean, you can get in debt in America for healthcare, and then it's essential. So.
Well, I think that's bullshit as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that guy. Yeah, I didn't think about that. College debts, I think, are bullshit. Obviously, I don't know why. That's a thing.
Bills for your animals.
Yeah, but college things are a lot more different because in the UK, the way it works is it's not a debt like they come knocking on your door. The debt, most of that can get written off if you're out the country for a long time. It's like a sort of, you only pay it off when you start earning income, and then it becomes like a tax. I still think that, I mean, that's kind of, when I think about that, that's actually not bad, because it only means that the only people whose tax money gets wasted on college are the people who bothered going, and those who didn't never have to pay it. If you think about it that way. So it shouldn't, in the UK, that's not really that bad of a system, really.
Well, it's like your friend, right? He went to college to get a degree, but then he stopped going, so he never got that degree, but he still had tons of debt. Does that mean it doesn't get cancelled? He still has to pay all of that money for like the first year or whatever?
I don't know. I've never been that stupid, but I'm going to assume that he would still have to pay. I think, I don't know, but the more I think about that, that's a pretty good system actually, because it means that I would never have to pay for some twat's gender studies degree, but they would because they're that dumb. But that's a pretty good system. So I guess that's not really a debt. That's more like a voluntary tax. I mean, I'm not going to make this another rant about education, but so I guess that's a bit excluded, at least here. I don't know how it works in other countries. Because in America, you hear about people, like rich people's fathers paying for the college in full. That doesn't happen here, to my knowledge. So I don't know what the system is over there. But yeah, healthcare, that would suck. I don't think anyone should have to get... God, the last thing you fucking need if your health's in bad condition is debt. God, imagine being physically fucked and mentally fucked.
Yeah, but also imagine if somebody else inflicts the violence on you and you have to go to the hospital because of what someone else did to you, and then you have to pay.
Do you, or do they not have to pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But that would be bullshit. So I can't imagine that. If that's why you have car insurance, right? If so, you wouldn't have health insurance.
Well, there's some people that don't have health insurance because they can't. They can't have that.
Right, I see. So they can't afford the health insurance, but
And then,
okay.
And also, it doesn't cover everything, I've heard.
Look, I'm getting a headache even thinking about the complexities of American healthcare. I don't want to imagine it. I don't want to imagine it. Yeah, but that's bullshit as well. Like educational debt is pretty bullshit, but I like it in the way that the only people who pay are the people who go. That's good. I just don't like the idea of poor people being excluded from education because they're poor. I definitely don't like the idea of poor people being excluded from health because they're poor. But at the same time, I also, if I was rich, I'd get angry that I'm paying for some chav's like ninth. I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know. It's complicated. My mind's in two places on this, but yeah. Basically, the TLDR is don't get in debt. Or
I think that schools should teach finances.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to come up with a good punchline to end it. What rhymes with debt?
I don't know.
Don't get in debt, or you'll end up wet. No, that sounds awful. Oh God! Right, just end it. Oof.